Morning we'll begin our study in Deuteronomy chapter 2. Last week we covered Deuteronomy chapter 1. We spent a little bit of time on the front end talking about how the book of Deuteronomy consists of about 4 or 5 discourses that Moses is going to give to the new generation as he prepares them to go over to take the promised land. But before they go over into the west side, which is the primary of the promised land, there's the east side to be taken care of, and they're going to have to pass through Edom, Moab, the Ammonites, and the Amorites, okay? And God has given them some specific instructions that we saw in the book of Numbers, and I'll refer back to that in just a minute. So what Deuteronomy consists of is a retelling to the new generation. The old generation now has passed away, and the new generation is now ready to take over, to take control, okay? So that old group that had wandered in the wilderness for about 40 years has now died and gone on. So Moses is reminding them of their past history and of what God had expected of them. And so we find the book of Deuteronomy is going to consist of that, as well as some of the events that they're going to encounter as they head that way to cross the River Jordan later on after they pass through Edom and Moab and places like that. And God has given them some specific instructions about how to deal with the Edomites, the Moabites, and the Amorites. The primary targets that God is looking at is actually when you get up in there where the Amorites are at, not Ammonites. Amorites is two different distinct people. A part of the Canaanite lineage is who they are, okay? And when you look at it, he talks about the Amorites, also an Amoritish king named Og, we're going to get into in the land of Bashan. He talks about him a great deal. And so we're going to find some of the battles that's going to begin to take place after they pass through. And there was a reason God had told them that he did not want them to meddle, if you will, with the Edomites, the Moabites, and the Amorites. Even though God had given them those instructions, we know man sometimes has other ideas, doesn't he? Okay, we know, for example, and we're going to see that when they went to pass through Edom, Moses had sent an envoy, and we're not going to cause you any harm, we're just passing through. God had given them instructions about that, and we're going to see here in just a minute, because God considered them brethren, okay? Edom is the descendants of Esau. God had promised Esau that land where his people had settled. Now, the Moabites, if you remember, was the descendants of Lot through his oldest daughter, okay? And we find that the Ammonites, Ammonites, were descendants of Lot through his younger daughter. So God had given them that land, okay? And he really did not want them to take that land. He wanted them to pass through and begin to take the land that belongs to the Amorites, Amorites, and the country north of that and to the northeast of that. And this is where Manasseh and Reuben and Gad are going to settle. So kind of gives us an overview of what's going on in the book of Deuteronomy. Some of the things we talked about in the book of Numbers, which was just a snapshot, if you will, or a flash of an event, we're going to begin to see a little clearer, okay, at what went on and what we talked about. We're going to begin to see it in a little bit more detailed. One of the things I want to do is just to remind us what went on in the book of Numbers, and I really don't want to refer back to that. Like I say, it's going to start to get a little clearer. In Numbers chapter 20, we find that, God told the children of Israel he didn't want them to fight the Edomites. So he sent the envoy up there. So we're going to pass through your land peacefully. And God told them, said, now while you're passing through that land, I want you to buy your water and your food from them, okay? I don't want you to take on the role of being a bunch of vagabonds and riffraff when you go through that land, okay? I want you to show responsibility. And we know in Numbers chapter 20, verses 14 through 21, Edom refused them passage, and so they had to turn toward the Red Sea and head toward the land of Canaan via around Kadesh Barnea. Okay, remember talking about Kadesh Barnea. Well, Moses retells the story of what happened there, and where they disobeyed God, and God told Moses, now, don't you go up there with them. They went up there, I'm just giving a quick overview, and tried to take and break into Canaan on their own, and were defeated and pushed out. Okay? So he talked about that, about how, you're powerless without God. So with that, we find in Numbers chapter 21, Sihon, king of the Amorites. He talks about that and about that land that to be taken of the Amorites. One of the things, too, we remember about the Moabites, and he's going to want them to pass through that land peacefully. If you remember, the Moabites refused passage, and what did they do? They made a confederation with the Midianites and went and got Balaam. Remember the story of Balaam? He wanted to curse Israel. You can say that even though God wanted peace amongst these people because he considered them brethren, even though it's been about 400 years, time had passed from Jacob to Esau to now, he still wanted them to be at peace with each other. Now, the reality of it is maybe not so much peace, because later on in their history, especially in the book of Judges, when we get there, and the book of 1st and 2nd Kings, great battles are going to take place between the Edomites and the Moabites and the Amorites. Okay? So it takes on the appearance that God wanted this thing this way, but a lot of times man don't want to do it that way, does it? It's kind of like what happened with Pharaoh, isn't it? Moses went down there and said, hey, let my people go and we'll go. What did Pharaoh do? No, I'm not. So a lot of calamity comes from that, doesn't it? But anyway, that's what we're going to be looking at. Numbers chapter 25, we find verses 1 through 2. And in verse 17 that Israel committed whoredom with the Moabites. We remember that story. And with the Midianites. And so God specifically told Moses that at some point in time in Numbers chapter 31, verses 1 through 3, you're going to vex the Midianites. Okay, you're going to go in there and you're going to have to do battle with them. Take them out. Okay. Now the Midianites, this is Midian. His mother was Keturah, which was Abraham's second wife. So, as we boil it down, Jeff, and I guess you hear it said over and over again, all those folks over in there are what? Double first cousin to their own self, ain't they? That's just one big family fight. That's what it is, over that strip of land called the land of Canaan, or Israel in our time, okay, and what would become Israel. So that kind of gives you an overview setting of it. Deuteronomy chapter 2 recounts the part of the Israelites' 40-year journey in the wilderness guided by God's command. Moses narrates how God instructed them to steer clear of conflict with certain nations, emphasizes God's sovereignty over both Israel and other nations. So God did want them to pass through to steer clear of any conflict with these other nations, okay? Especially the Moabites, the Edomites, and the Ammonites, okay? Because he considered them to be brethren, okay? And he had given them that land. The thing is, the Edomites, the Moabites, and the Amorites were gross idolaters, okay? They were gross idolaters. And, we remember talking about some of the gods that they worshiped and some of the sacrifices they did of the babies to the fire god Molech and all this kind of thing. So that's one of the things to keep in mind about those people. They were gross idolaters, okay? So, and one of the things Israel was supposed to do amongst his brethren was when did God want them to pass through there and not cause a conflict? Well, what was Israel's mission? To show forth the glory of who? Of God. What's our mission today as we go out into the world? A type of Edom, a type of Moab, if you will. To show forth the glory of God. Can't do that if you're fighting them, can you? So that was the whole point behind this, if you want to give a quick summation of it. okay? The years in the wilderness, verses 1 through 3. Morgan, do you have Deuteronomy chapter 2, verses 1 through 3?
Then we turned and journeyed into the wilderness of the way of the Red Sea, as the Lord spoke to me, and we skirted Mount Seir for many days. And the Lord spoke to me, saying, You have skirted this mountain long enough, turn northward.
Okay, so God is telling them now, you've been this way long enough, I want you to start taking a northward turn. So the Israelites traveled from the Red Sea toward the hill country of Seir for many days. After a long duration, God instructed them to turn northward. And when you look at it, there is a red balloon, if you will, a red star, and it says Seir, so it's up there in that location somewhere where God is going to start telling them to turn northward and travel up into that area. And we'll come back to these maps in just a minute. So, what about Mount Seir? It's mentioned almost 40 times in the Old Testament. Sometimes Mount Seir is simply referred to as Seir. This is the case in Deuteronomy 33:2. The Lord came from Sinai and dawned from Seir upon us. Neither Mount Sinai nor Mount Seir is referred to as mount in this verse. It's possible that Mount Seir can refer to the region of Seir. Remember, we talked about a lot of times when it refers to a mount, it may not necessarily be a particular mount, it may be a mountainous range, okay? We know the ark came to rest in the mountainous range of Ararat, okay? Very often we just say the ark came to rest at Mount Ararat. Well, yes, that's okay, but you got to realize it was the mountainous range of Ararat where it came to rest at. The term Mount Seir is often used simply as a geographical marker to explain where something happened. The primary significance of Mount Seir is that this mountainous region was a territory God gave to Esau. The Lord had done the same for the descendants of Esau who lived in Mount Seir when he destroyed the Horites from before them. They drove them out and have lived in this place to this day. Deuteronomy 2:22, look at that. Because Seir belonged to Esau's descendants, Israel was forbidden from invading that territory. God explains in Deuteronomy 2:5, do not contend with them, for I will not give you any of their land. No, not as much as for the sole of their foot you tread on, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. So where they're at is in an area up there that was given to Esau. So as I said before, when we went through the book of Exodus, Leviticus and Numbers, we were just getting brief snapshots. Now we're getting a little more detail of what's going on within these countries. And so what I'm going to do here right quick, I'm always looking for a better map of what's going on over here. Well, when you go back, there are so many maps of the whole world because there's a lot of discussion exactly where these locations were, okay? And then every once in a while you come across some that seem to kind of coincide together. So this seems to be an actual depiction of what we're looking at. Probably in the days of the spies going in, which is this red line here, spied out the land. Now this is the land on the west side. This is the primary here. This is where you're going to get into really the battles and fights they're going to have once they cross the Jordan River. You got the Gershites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, and all the Jebusites, and all those people that's in that primary land that God is going to give to the children of Israel. Right now, we're on the east side of the Jordan River, more what we would call Jordan and Syria today. So down here we have Edom, okay, descendants of Esau, Moab, descendants of Lot through his daughter, and you come up through here you're going to start to see the Amorites, okay, this little area right in here. The Ammon, another descendant of Lot through his daughter, is here. So right up through here is where they're going to start going, okay? And all up in here. So this is the area primarily that Manasseh, Reuben, and Gad are going to possess. It's right up in there, okay? So maybe that makes it a little clearer on this map, and as we read through this, maybe it'll be a little clearer also. So, circumventing Eden, verses 4 through 8. Greg, do you have that?
And command the people, saying, that you will pass through the territory of your brothers, the sons of Esau, who live in Seir, and they will be afraid of you, so be very careful. Do not provoke them, for I will not give you any of their land, even as little as a footstep, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. You shall buy food from them with money, so that you may eat. You shall also purchase water from them with money, so that you may drink. For the Lord your God has blessed you in all that you have done. He has known your wandering through this great wilderness these 40 years. The Lord your God has been with you. You have not lacked a thing. So we passed beyond our brothers, the sons of Esau, who live in Seir, away from the Arabah road, away from Elat, and from
Zungabor, I guess is how you pronounce that.
Ezion River, and we turned and passed through the way of the wilderness.
Okay, so here we have the instructions given. The King James Version says, do not meddle with them, okay? In other words, he didn't want them to go in there and cause any trouble or conflict. Matter of fact, he tells them to do what? To buy the food and water from them. You're not to go in there as vagabonds and all begging like you have need, because you don't. I have blessed you. Kind of a principle today with the church, isn't it? As we go out into the world and teach the gospel, how do we go? We take care of our own, don't we? We pay our bills, we buy from the people that we're engaged in and things like that to promote goodwill, don't we? God doesn't send us out there as vagabonds with all kinds of gimmicks and shows to do what? Generate money. You know? That's not the mission of the church. The church is to take care of its own, okay? So this is what God intended for them to do as they go through there. Also, one thing you're seeing here too, so far out in the wilderness, who has taken care of them? God has. He's provided water and food and all like that for them, hasn't he? So what are we going to start seeing happening? As they become a formalized government and nation, they were going to have to just start depending upon more on themselves, hadn't they, and their relation. God was going to still take care of them, but what they can do for themselves, they need to do for themselves, and God takes care of the rest. You know, isn't that true today? That today, God doesn't do for us what we can do for ourselves, does he? Now, does he provide the means for us to be able to do? Yeah. But who does it? You know? God doesn't do like the birds, does he? He doesn't provide the seed and the bread and the grain and things like that for them to eat. Because they can't tell, can they? But today we can tell, can't we? So if we have a talent or something that we can do in our lives, guess what God expects us to do? To do it. Now, he'll provide the means or the method or the avenue, if you will, but we got to get up off the couch and do what? We got to go to the mountain, haven't we? Yeah. So kind of the same principle you're seeing here that's starting to take hold in Israel with these things. So he don't want them meddling with them. He wants them to go through there in peace. So here we are here in Edom, around Mount Seir. Okay. Next is going to be the Moabites right here. Okay. What about the Moabites? What is he going to say about them? So let's take a look and see. Now we just talked about that. Passing through Moab, verses 9 through 15. Daniel, do you have that?
Then the Lord said to me, do not harass Moab, nor contend with them in battle, for I will not give you any of their land as a possession, because I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession. The enemy had dwelt there in times past, a people as great and numerous and tall as the Anakim. They were also regarded as giants, like the Anakim, but the Moabites called them Enim. The Horites formerly dwelt in Seir, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their place, just as Israel did the land of their possession, which the Lord gave them. Now rise and cross over the valley of Zered. So we crossed over the valley of Zered, and the time we took to come from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed over the valley of Zered was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war was consumed from the midst of the camp, just as the Lord had sworn to them. 52. For indeed the hand of the Lord was against them, to destroy them from the midst of the camp until they were consumed.
Okay, so here we have now the same kind of instructions given about Moab, isn't it? He didn't want them to contend with them, but he wanted them to pass through. And he gives a little bit of history about some of the people of Moab here. He says the Emims dwelt therein in verse 10, a people great and many and tall as the Anakins. This word Emims and Anakin and Horims and all like that refer to the Nephilims, or giants from the Old Testament, from folk before the flood. So throughout this, so far we've seen the Bible talking about giants, okay? These are some big people. Now, there is some thought about what that term giant means. Were they literally giants, or were they people that were of great power, great warriors, great strength? Is it in reference to that? Well, when you kind of take a look at it, it looks like this. It's probably a combination of both, because when we get into chapter 3, we're going to find that King Og, when they go up into Bashan to take it, it says that his bed was like 14 foot 3 inches long. Or it could refer to his esophagus, but so he was a big man, okay? So no doubt there were some big people in this land, okay? There were some giants in this land compared to the children of Israel. And we know, you think about King Saul, he was a tall, big guy, wasn't he? So, that's what it talks about here. So these Anakins and these giants were in the land. Moab had went in there and done what? Taken that land, okay? So now we have the Moabites in this land. And then it talks about, that generation that was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war were wasted from among the hosts. Those are old, for indeed the hand of the Lord was against them to destroy them from among the hosts until they were consumed. So he's talking about that old group. He was reminding them that, hey, this is a new group now, a new group of warriors 20 years of age and above had come into being. That old group has passed away. In verse 16, I'll just jump into that even though I don't have it up here. Notice what it says here. So it came to pass when all men of war were consumed and dead from amongst the people. So that's back in reference to that old group. Similarly, God advised the Israelites not to harass the Moabites or engage in battle with them. Moses mentions the Emites used to inhabit the land but were replaced by the Moabites. The Israelites crossed the waters of Reed, noting that 38 years had passed since they left Kadesh Barnea, and all the warriors from the older generation had died. Avoiding conflict with the Amorites, okay? The Ammonites, okay, not the Amorites. That's Ham's descendants. They're not going to avoid conflict with them. Now, later on, all this is going to fall apart, okay? Great battles are going to take place among these people, especially in the book of Judges in the book of Kings, 1st and 2nd Kings, it's just all going to kind of implode, okay? So anyway, but originally God's plan was what for these people? Peace among your brethren. Okay, so verses 16 through 23. Read, you got that?
So it came about when all within the fort had finally perished from among the people. The Lord spoke to me, saying, Today you shall cross over Ar, the border of Moab. When you come opposite the sons of Ammon, do not harass them nor provoke them. For I will not give you any of the land of the sons of Ammon as a possession, because I have given it to the sons of Lot as possession. It is also regarded as the land of the Rephaim, for Rephaim formerly lived in it, but the Ammonites call them Zamzummim. Your people is great, numerous, and tall as the Anakim, but the Lord destroyed them before them, and they dispossessed them and settled in their place, just as he did for the sons of Esau, who lived in Seir, and he destroyed the Horites from before them. They dispossessed them and settled in their place even to this day. Then the Avim, who lived in villages as far as Gaza, the Caphtorim, who came from Caphtor, destroyed them and lived in their place.
Okay, so here we have the same thought being carried over to the Amorites. And as we said, these here again are descendants of Lot through his younger daughter. So that was the land that he had given unto them. God instructs the Israelites to move on and cross Arnon, but to avoid conflict with the Ammonites. He would not give any of the land, Ammonites' land. Moses recalls the former inhabitants of the land, the Anakites, the Emites. Here we find the word Zamzummim. That land was filled with some pretty good sized people, wasn't it? It says they were giants, so they were big people that were in this land. Really, when you take a look at it and you go back and look at it, don't know much about how these giants within these people came about. From what I can find and what I can tell, there's several theories out there, but when you look at the theories compared to what the overall picture of the Bible is, it's just that. It's man's thoughts on how this came about to be, okay? On this particular case, we just have to accept the fact that the Bible said there were giants in the land. Well, guess what was there then? Giants in the land, okay? How'd they get there? Don't know whether I got a good answer on that, Daniel. Don't know that anybody's got a good answer for it to be. And some of the theories, if you want to go out there and research it, I'm going to go forewarn you, some of the theories that man has about how those giants were there, it's pretty wild, okay? It can get pretty strange, okay? I can tell you this, it had nothing to do with the angels of heaven being cast out and interbreeding with human females, okay? You can forget that one, but it's there, okay? And it may be more popular than what you think, but I'm just going to throw that in there to let you know you're going to find some strange thoughts on all this when you go out there and take a look at it. Maybe a good answer there, but I couldn't really find one. Okay. What I put up here on this map here is to show you this is what it's going to look like. On the right, the 12 tribes of Israel. Here's Moab. There's Moab here. Okay. Here's this Amoritish, part of this Amoritish kingdom right here. All right. There's the tribe of Reuben and part of the tribe of Gad. Okay. Over here is the Ammonites, okay, the descendants of Lot, okay. They're over here, they're not to be bothered. So this little stretch right in here is to be left alone, okay. So right in here, beginning back 2/3 of the way up from the Dead Sea, going north toward the Sea of Galilee, is where all this is going to take place. This is where Gad's going to settle, Manasseh is going to settle, okay. Okay, up here is the Sea of Galilee, right up in this area here. Now, some maps have this going a little bit farther on up towards Syria. Some of them have it going a little bit farther out toward Jordan, but that's a general idea of what's going to happen, okay? So in the end, this is the land that Manasseh and Gad and Reuben are going to hold. We still haven't got to the courthouse. That's coming. But they said they wanted to stay on the east side of Jordan, and so God is going to allow them to dwell in that land. Any comments, questions, any of you brethren got about that? I know I'm moving 90 to nothing, but I'm trying to get through chapter 2, so. Yes, it's becoming any clearer what we've talked about in the book of Leviticus and Numbers, and what's going on here through those snapshots that we had, Daniel? Yeah, Deuteronomy clears up a whole lot of, well, how'd that happen like that, you know? So this is what it's going to look like. Divine assurance for conquest, verses 24 and 25, Jim.
Rise up, set out on your journey, and go over the valley of Aaron. Behold, I have given unto your hand Sihon the Amorite, the king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to take possession and contend with him in battle. This day I will begin to put the dread and fear of you and the peoples who are under the whole heaven, and shall hear the report of you and shall tremble in the anguish because of you.
Okay, so let me go back there for just a minute. I should have dropped that in there, and we'll pull that map back up. What it's talking about here when he talks about where I'm at, Sion. Okay, this is this area right here that they're going to go into. This area right here. You can't see it, I don't think, from where you're at. But when it says the Amorites, Sion, S-I-H-O-N. So this is the area it's talking about right here. Up here in this Amoritish area, we're going to get Bashan. This area is known as Bashan. You're going to see the king up there is a guy named Og, O-G. So we're going to be going into that. So that's what he's talking about right there. God encourages the Israelites, telling them to prepare for battle against Sihon, the Amorite king. God assures them of victory, making the beginning of the Israelites, marking the beginning of the Israelite conquest. Some of the teaching points in this. Back this up a little bit. I think I got an overhead that is, okay. I guess we'll go 27. I don't know where that overhead's at I had for the rest of the chapter, okay? Don't know what happened to it, Daniel. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. Maybe we'll come across it as we go through the teaching points. So why don't we come on down, and I'll read verses 26 on through the balance of the chapter, okay? And I sent messengers out of the wilderness of Kedethmoth unto Sihon, king of Heshbon, with the words of peace, saying, Let me pass through thy land. I will go along the highway. I will neither turn to the right or left. Thou shalt sell me meat that I may eat, and I make money for water. As the children of Esau, which dealt in Seir, and the Moabites, which dealt in Ar, did unto me, till I shall pass over Jordan unto the land which our Lord God giveth us. But Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let us pass. For the Lord thy God hardened his spirit. Where have we heard terminology like that before? Dealing with the Egyptian king, you know? So you can see that you're seeing that God has one plan or thought about it, but then another plan or thought is coming from man, okay? So it says here that his heart was hardened, and his heart was obstinate, that he might deliver him into thy hands, as appeared this day. And the Lord said unto me, Behold, I have begun to give Sihon and his land before thee, and begin to possess, that thou mayest inherit this land. Then Sihon came out against us, he and all his people, to fight at Jahaz. And the Lord our God delivered him before us, and we smote him and his sons and all the people. So what happened in this thing? What happened to the Pharaoh in Egypt about the hardness of your heart and not being opened about this thing? Same thing, didn't it? Same thing. God was going to give it to him anyway, but he allows man to make some decisions on his own. Remember, even though this was a heathen king involved in stupid idolatry, he still had what? Choice, didn't he? He had a choice to make in the matter. Pharaoh had a choice to make, didn't he? You know? Sometimes the wrong choices are made. So, anyway, God smote him. And notice what it says here. And we took all his cities at that time, and utterly destroyed the men, the women, the little ones of every city, left none to remain. So, you know, when you look at this, what is this about? And we've talked about this before, about Israel and intermarrying when they weren't supposed to be with these people, and God destroying them and things of that nature, getting rid of sin. He didn't want one influence of that culture left when they started. You'd have killed the men, women, and children. So you think about, well, you know, that is a kind of a terrible thing to do, but what he's looking at is trying to preserve his people for the coming of Jesus Christ. A little leaven will do what to the whole lump? That influence is there. The children grow up, they remember their parents and grandparents, and then they want to take vengeance out on, which was customary back then. We see that today. I mean, you know, it's customary over in some parts of the Middle East today that families can take out revenge upon things, can't they? Okay? God said no. All sin has got to go. Okay? And so that's what he did. Not one speck of sin was going to remain. Only the cattle we took, they preyed to ourselves, and they spoiled the cities we took. From Aroer, which is by the brink of the river Arnon, from the city that is by the river, even unto Gilead, there was not one city too strong for us. The Lord our God delivered all of us. Only the land of the children of Ammon thou camest not, nor any place of the river Jabbok, nor into the cities in the mountains, nor into whatsoever the Lord God forbade us. So they stopped at the border of Ammon, Ammon. Okay? These are the Amorites, Amorites, okay? So God had stopped them there, and it says here that there was not one city too strong for them to take. So there's nothing impossible with God, is there? Okay? So, now watch me find these other two overheads in some of this something. Any of you brethren got any comments on that, any thoughts or anything? I'm still blowing through it kind of quick. There's a whole lot more in there, but God's sovereignty and timing. Deuteronomy 2:3 states, you have circled this mountain long enough, turn northward. This verse highlights God's control over the timing direction of our lives. Respect the boundaries. Verses 4 and 5 instructs the Israelites not to provoke the descendants of Esau as God has given them their land. This teaches us to respect the boundaries God had set for us and for others. Provision in the wilderness. In verse 7 we read, for the Lord our God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He has watched over your journey through this vast wilderness. God's provisions and care are evident even in difficult times. Obedience to God's commands. The Israelites' journey was marked by obedience to God's instructions. It's seen in verses 13 through 14 where they were told to cross the Zered Valley. One of the things that we notice in this so far, as long as Israel was doing what God instructed them to do, were they victorious? Yeah. But when they turned and went against the directions of God, what happened to them? And we're going to see that at places like Ai and places like that when we get across the Jordan, okay, on the west side. They were defeated, wasn't they? Okay. The devil's going to defeat you if you're not walking hand in hand with Jesus, right? Yeah, powerful lessons in all this. God's faithfulness to his promise. This chapter concludes with the Israelites defeating King Sihon of Heshbon, demonstrating God's faithfulness in delivering his promises in verses 24 through 46. Okay, that's the end of chapter 2. We got just a few minutes, and I may step over into chapter 3 just briefly. Deuteronomy chapter 3. So what's going to be some of the conversation that's going to take place here in Deuteronomy chapter 3? Well, one of the things they are going to take Sihon, which we'll just call that the southern part of the Amorite kingdom, and now they're going to go north into the kingdom of Bashan. The king there's name is Og, and it's going to talk a good bit about him in chapter 3. But Israel's going to defeat Og and take his cities. And this is a pretty good sized place. If I remember correctly, I want to say there's something like 60 major cities that's within that realm over that they're going to take. So it's a significant place, okay? It's not a small chunk of land where Manasseh is going to settle out over there. Moses' exhortation to Joshua. Moses' prayer to enter the promised land. Moses is permitted to see it. And we know that that's going to come along about really in more detail when we go over into the end of the book of Deuteronomy, where he's going to go up to Mount Big Sky and look over, but he's not allowed to go in. So this is going to be some of the conversation that's going to be seen here in Deuteronomy chapter 3. So here again, this is kind of giving us a map, and I'll show this and then we'll stop and get ready for the worship service. And we'll come back to this. This map here kind of depicts, and as you've already seen, the land of Canaan at the time of Joshua. So what's being knitted out here, if you'll look at it, this right here, overall, big picture with the 12 tribes, would become the kingdom of Israel. Okay? Kind of see that right in there? Like that? Okay. Over here, it's going to border the Edomites, it's going to border the Moabites, and it's going to border the Amorites, okay? Ammonites, okay? God did, this is over here in what we would call Jordan, parts of Syria today, go on down south, goes into Arabia, and places like that. Now, where we're headed is up here north to Bashan. This area up in here is part of Bashan that they're going to take, right in here, okay? So they're going to take that area up in there. And as I said, this is what it's going to look like. So if you take this and kind of overlay it in there, you can kind of see how it all lays in there together. This was God's plan to give them the promised land. And as I said before, the core's in here. We haven't gotten here yet. We're still over here. Okay? When we get over in there, it's going to be a lot of Bible spots, a lot of different groups of people and things of that nature is going to take place. So, and we'll kind of pick up there next week. We'll probably come back to this slide just briefly and all like that, but we've got to get ready for the worship service. So let me ring it. Yeah, I can go ahead and ring that.